Welcome to my new office. I'm hiding in like a banquet room. All right, it's better than the truck, a little brighter. So here, Mark 5. Jesus restores a demon-possessed man. He continues his journey here. Now it's becoming public. He's out. So here we go. Boop, bam. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and the countryside. And the people who went out to see what had happened, when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons, and sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged him to go with him. Jesus did not let him in, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Jesus raises a dead girl and heals a sick woman. Now, when Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell to his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her, so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciple answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and trembled with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told them, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion, with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he had put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately, the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. Mark 6, a prophet without honor. Jesus left there and went to his hometown accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. "Where did this man get these things?" they asked. "What's the wisdom that he has been given to him? What are these remarkable miracles he is performing? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor, except in his own town, among his relatives, and in his own home." He could not do any miracles there, except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. He was amazed by their lack of faith. Jesus sent out the 12. Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village. Calling the 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over the impure spirits. These were his instructions: "Take nothing for the journey except a staff. No bread, no bag, no money in your belts. Wear sandals, but not an extra shirt. Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that town. And if any place will not welcome you or listen to you, leave that place and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them." They went out and preached that people should repent. They drove out many demons and anointed many sick people with oil and healed them. John the Baptist is beheaded. King Herod heard about this, for Jesus' name had become well known. Some were saying, "John the Baptist has been raised from the dead, and that is why miraculous powers are at work in him." Others said he is Elijah, and still others claimed he is a prophet, like one of the prophets of long ago. But when Herod heard this, he said, "John, whom I beheaded, has been raised from the dead." For Herod himself had given orders to have John arrested, and he had him bound and put in prison. He did this because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, whom he had married. For John had been saying to Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." So Herodias nursed a grudge against John and wanted to kill him, but she was not able to, because Herod feared John had protected him, knowing him to be a righteous and holy man. When Herod heard John, he was greatly puzzled, yet he liked to listen to him. Finally, the opportune time came. On his birthday, Herod gave a banquet for his high officials and military commanders and the leading men of Galilee. When the daughter of Herodias came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his dinner guests. The king said to the girl, "Ask me for anything you want, and I'll give it to you." And he promised her with an oath, "Whatever you ask, I will give you, up to half my kingdom." She went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask for?" "The head of John the Baptist," she answered. At once the girl hurried in to the king with the request, "I want you to give me right now the head of John the Baptist on a platter." The king was greatly distressed, but because of his oaths and his dinner guests, he did not want to refuse her. So he immediately sent an executioner with orders to bring John's head. The man went, beheaded John in the prison, and brought back his head on a platter. He presented it to the girl, and she gave it to the mother. On hearing this, John's disciples came and took his body, and laid it in a tomb. Jesus feeds 5,000. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. "This is a remote place," they said, "and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "That would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat?" "How many loaves do we have?" he asked. "Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up the 12 baskets of broken pieces of fish and bread. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. Jesus walks on water. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get to the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on the countryside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. When they had crossed over, they landed in Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got off the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout that whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, and countrysides, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let him touch them, even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched were healed. I finally found a place that's quiet where I'm staying, that's not in the car. So, you guys get a privilege. Video's inside. Mark chapters 1 and 2 showed us who Jesus is, and chapters 3 and 4 showed us how people responded to him. Now 5 and 6 will show us what happens when his authority collides with real life. Not in theory and not with crowds, but with chaos, loss, exhaustion, fear, and familiarity. And these chapters quietly press one important question. Will you trust Jesus when his authority disrupts comfort, challenges familiarity, and asks for faith beyond understanding? When your personal circumstance or societal situation, family life is disrupted by your faith, or those closest to you not aligning with your loyalty and faith change, will you trust Jesus? So let's go into it. Mark 5:1-20 shows authority over the uncontrollable. Jesus crosses into Gentile territory and meets a man no one else can help. This man is isolated, violent, unrestrained. Chains don't work. Communities have given up. Hope is gone. And Jesus speaks once. The chaos submits, the demons recognize his authority immediately, and the man is completely restored. But here's the part that should stop us in this. The community asks Jesus to leave, because sometimes deliverance is threatening when people prefer stability over transformation, even in discomfort. People will turn away from change even if it means a better circumstance. And I say this all the time to friends, family, and fitness clients and communities. People are so used to waking up feeling unwell, tired, sore, cranky, sick, that changing their eating habits and working out more, even if it means they will feel better, live longer, be healthier, it's nearly impossible for them to do. Their subconscious and comfort of just being where they are is almost insurmountable in their heart and mind. So now as we move on to 21 to 34, right? Jesus shows authority that restores dignity. So here we meet a woman who has suffered for 12 years. She's unclean by law, isolated by society, exhausted financially and emotionally. She doesn't shout, she doesn't demand, she just reaches. She doesn't even want to be noticed. She's desperate for healing. Jesus doesn't heal her body, he restores her identity. He calls her daughter. This is faith that isn't impressive or polished. It's desperate trust. And Jesus always honors it. Story time. So I'll go into more detail with this in another moment. But recently I fasted. Complete. No food, no liquids, nothing. Okay, for 3 days. No calories, no liquids. First day was fine. Second day was a bombardment of sin. I couldn't even believe how hard evil was attacking. The third and final day started the same as the second day. But that night, in the final 10 hours, I had the most painful but spiritually releasing experience of my life. I was crying, completely sobbing. My body was in pain. My mind was filled with temptation. Sin was begging me to participate. I had a migraine that felt like my skin was peeling off my body. I couldn't even crack open my eyes. And in my sobbing, I begged for Jesus. That was it. I was out. I was begging. This went on for over 2 hours. My poor puppies just watched me suffer while they had their snacks and water. I laid in bed and prayed for hours. And when suddenly I felt a hand on my chest, and I knew it was him. I felt instant peace. The tears stopped. Pain was gone. I knew in my heart he came to set me free. Instantly my mind was clear. Instantly my heart felt peace. And those calm or those violent tears became these streaming tears of almost peace down my cheek. Not a single thought passed my mind. Not a single sin or evil was present. He cast them all out. I felt this peace for a few minutes, and then I was fast asleep. I woke up a few hours later feeling like I was not even myself anymore, like I haven't even fasted. Aches that I had felt, pain in my body, held on to, sin, distractions were completely gone. I prayed with a heart full of gratitude. Amen. Thank you, Jesus. I could have quit any time. I could have gave into eating, drinking, or any of the other several sins that were calling me out. I would have fallen back to feeling as I did, but I chose faith, full, undeniable faith, and that choice allowed me to feel the hand of God, the peace of his heart and mind, and I will forever be grateful for everything he does in my life. All right, back to the book of Mark. So in 5:35 to 43, Jesus shows his authority over death itself. And before Jesus reaches Jairus' house, death interrupts the story. Everyone says it's too late. They criticize, they ridicule Jairus. Jesus says otherwise. He speaks gently, he speaks personally, and life returns. In the presence of the King, death does not get the final word. And sometimes this is difficult to understand, especially when we're in it. When our human emotions take hold for a moment, we need to give in to him, because our physical blocks, our physical shortcomings are exactly what we need to let go of. And as we go into Mark 6, this shows familiarity and offense here, right? Jesus returns home, and something strange happens. The people who know him best, they believe him the least. We see this with the disciples all along. That familiarity, it dulls faith when expectations replace trust. Jesus' power is not absent here, but it is resisted. And not because he lacks authority, but because hearts are closed. This is a reflection of where Mark 3, where he makes emphasis on his closest followers are his brother, his sister, and his mother. Loyalty and effort are the determining factor where considering your relationship to Jesus. As it goes on into 7 to 13, right? Mark 6, 7 to 13, this is where Jesus shows his authority. It's shared, not hoarded. Jesus sends out the 12. This is the beginning to their true test. How are you? You want to get in? Any other surprises? Then we move on to Mark 6, 7 to 13. And Jesus shows his authority. It's shared, not hoarded. He sends out the 12. This is the beginning of their true test. Not with abundance, not with backup plans, but without any plans at all, right? Don't bring money, nothing but the clothes on your back. Only the grace and the generosity of others will get you through this. Have faith. So, but with all the dependence on faith, right? So the kingdom doesn't advance through resources, it advances through trust. And this is something we saw through the whole relationship, where Judas is constantly focused on how do we monetize this? Because in his mind, he's like, well, we have to have more to do more. That wasn't Jesus' lesson. So, we're all here called to share the gospel against all odds and forces. Faith kept to yourself will lead you away from heaven. And this is different from relationship. You can be a faithful servant in your own life. You can pray, fasting, have devotion. But if you do not speak the gospel and spread his word, you are doing no true service to the kingdom of God. As we move on to 14 to 29, this shows the cost of the truth. Okay, Mark then pauses to remind us on John the Baptist. John spoke the truth to the end, and it cost him his life. Faithfulness does not guarantee safety. In fact, the more faithful, loyal, and outspoken follower of Christ you are, you bet your life you'll be challenged by evil. The kingdom advances through costly obedience, not comfortable compromise. As we get from Mark 6:30 to 44, Jesus shows his compassion in the face of exhaustion. Him and his disciples, they're tired. They need rest. But Jesus sees the crowd and is moved with compassion. What feels insufficient becomes abundant when surrendered. The kingdom is not built on what we have, but on who he is. We need to remember that we are acting in his place. When our feet are tired, he will strengthen them. When our minds are under battle, he will fight alongside us. And when our hearts are at odds, he will fill it with peace. Now we move on to 6:45 to 52. All right, so now we got the main authority over fear. Right? Jesus walks on water at the end here. Okay? And this terrified the disciples. They don't even recognize him. They think his presence is a threat. And this is also, again, reflecting each time he makes changes for people. You see the people around in fear. his family, his closest followers. So fear distorts that perception when hearts are hardened. You cannot comprehend the discernment between love and compassion and fear of the unknown, right? Because you're not having faith here. You're having faith here. My heart's open. So fear will pull you away from God quicker than any other evil. And Jesus reveals that his authority extends not just over storms, but over fear itself. You must keep your eyes on him, your faith in him, and your prayers toward him. As we get into Mark 6:53 to 56, this shows his authority that heals without spectacle. Jesus healed quietly, no drama or attention, right? Most of his healings were in private. Told them, right? What he's seeking isn't this grandiose attention. He often tells those he heals not to tell anyone. There's no announcement, just compassion. He comes in, he heals the sick, he goes out. So faith doesn't require spectacle, it requires trust. Chapters 5 and 6 reveal a king whose authority reaches every place fear claims dominion of. And right at that very moment, chaos submits, sickness yields, death retreats, scarcity is overcome. Fear is confronted. The question is no longer can Jesus be trusted, but whether we will trust him. So ask yourself these questions in reflection. Where do you see chaos or fear influencing your life right now? How do you respond when Jesus disrupts your comfort? In what ways might familiarity be dulling your faith? What resources are you clinging to instead of trusting God? And when fear rises, do you recognize Jesus' presence or misinterpret it? Thanks for joining me here, and I'll see you guys next time for Mark 7 to 8. God bless.